What was your thought when that first Power Four offer came in? Like when Kansas and Kansas State came in and they offered you, and they're like, Larry, we want you to play in the Big 12, man. Like, what was that like?
Just like all the work I put in the summer paid off because I knew my junior year tape. If you ever watched it, I knew I had to work on a lot of things to become a Power Four player. And that whole summer, I was just working with great coaches and teammates, and just to know that that work is paid off. But I still have a lot more to do, because now it's time to go to college and be a man. It's a man's game, so I have to lock in.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello, and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here with Ryan Wallace from GoPowerCat.com and 24/7 Sports, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Ryan and I traveled down to Derby last Friday to see a popular playoff matchup from the last few years, with Derby hosting Manhattan. The Indians pulled off a big win, 31-21, to reach Manhattan's second 6A state title game in the last 3 years. We'll have more on that game, along with an interview with Raytown wideout Larry Porter, the subject of a heated recruiting battle between Kansas and Kansas State, coming up. As always, if you like what you're hearing, tell your friends about us. Subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. All those things help us to grow the show and get us in front of more people like you. Ryan, let's go ahead and fire up that alarm, because Kansas State has been busy on the recruiting trail. The Wildcats dipped into the junior college ranks to come away with Patrick Tackey, a defensive tackle from Hines Community College in Mississippi, and a top 20 junior college player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Ryan, Kansas State was looking for guys that could team with Damian Alalio in next year's defensive tackle room, and I feel like there's some scheme versatility here with the way Tackey moves.
Yeah, I was going to say, mobility-wise, you watch him out of Hines Community College, came up on an official visit to Kansas State. But again, watching him a little bit on tape, it's good. There's a little bit more agility with him. It's not just your typical kind of nose guard, scheme, gap plug kind of guy. He gets after the quarterback a little bit. They ran a 4-man front at Hines, and so you see the New York native kind of playing a little bit further outside from the interior, but then he can also go head-to-head with a center, at that zero tech. So I like the get for Kansas State. I think it definitely gives them some more depth on the interior with Uso moving on after this season. And yet at the same time, I still think they're probably going to look in the portal, Kevin, for, somebody that's got a little bit more girth, somebody that's maybe a little bit more of that natural nose guard, defensive tackle type of player. And we'll see kind of what becomes available. But again, for right now, what you get out of Tackey is a guy that, again, like you said, is a flexible piece on the inside.
Yeah, and shortly after Tackey committed to Kansas State, the Wildcats added to their receiver room with a commitment from Arian Conception. He goes by Nunu, a likely slot receiver from Julius L. Chambers High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Concepcion, who was committed to NC State, where his brother won the ACC Rookie of the Year a year ago. Ryan, he really adds some speed and route running to that Wildcat receiver mix.
It's a nice get for them because I think in a lot of ways it kind of gives you a player that is reminiscent, I guess, of Sterling Lockett, but with a little bit more natural juice to him, right? He's got maybe not as dynamic as of a route runner, but in terms of pure speed, acceleration, all these things, he probably is a little bit ahead of Sterling Lockett, right? So it gives you more of the natural slot man. But let's be honest, Kevin, I'm not, we don't mince words on this show. This is a good get for Kansas State, but it's one that they're hoping becomes a great get.
Sure.
If Big Brother KC enters the portal at some point, you would assume with NC State maybe not having the type of season that they had, potentially it could happen as soon as this winter. Maybe it's next winter, maybe it's, the spring. But that's where this becomes a very proactive move by Kansas State and a great get, because as you said, I think Nunu's a pretty good player. I think his brother has already proven himself to be further than that, beyond that, at the collegiate level, at the Power 4 level at NC State. And K-State fans remember him from the Pop-Tarts Bowl last winter. So they saw it firsthand what he can do. This would be a dynamic pairing. And yeah, you would think that if you impressed brother enough and the family enough on an official visit, that if and when KC got in the portal, it would be a relatively quick process if he were interested in kind of keeping it in the family bloodlines in Manhattan. But again, we'll see if that happens. If it's just Nunu, Kevin, a good get for Kansas State, and another guy that, again, you watch him on tape and he does some things schematically that Kansas State is familiar with, right? In terms of, just dump passes and swing passes and then letting him do what he does in space. So you watch the film and you see the natural transition that he should make into this offense for K-State. It's a good get.
I think he separates on cuts pretty well too. He's one of those guys that sometimes you see a guy run something like a post route and the corner is kind of still there with him after the break. Not really the case with Nunu. Like you said, a very good get for Kansas State. Moving away from commitments and into key local visits, we had a few of them. Kansas State and Kansas both hosted Raytown wide receiver Larry Porter over the last few days. Porter, who, of course, Ryan, you were ahead of the curve on earlier this year on the show before he had offers from either school, of course, caught 92 passes for 1,410 yards and 18 touchdowns in just 10 games this year. Ryan, there may not be a hotter local recruit right now, with us being only about a week from the start of the early signing period.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm excited to catch up with Larry here in a little bit and have fans kind of get to know him a little bit better too, because he's clearly one that both of these schools really, really are hot after. And just kind of making the rounds, right? You start to get a sense of just how badly he's wanted on both campuses. And I think it's because of all the things we've talked about with him before, Kevin. It's just the game comes so naturally for him. And, he's a basketball player and you see that translate to his game, but he really emerged as a football talent. I mean, like a real football talent this season. Just again, in the ability that his ability to go up and win catches, whether they're contested, whether it's him separating, he's got, the length, he's got enough speed to get it done. And I think the more you kind of fine tune his route tree, the sky's the limit for this kid. And I'm really excited again to, promote one of Kansas City's own and see which of the local schools is going to wind up getting him. Maybe we can get him to deliver a commitment right here on Verbal Commitment, Kevin, but I don't know. We'll see.
We will have our interview, of course, with Porter here in a little bit. Speaking of Kansas and Kansas State commitment Lincoln Cure, a 5-star recruit and the nation's #1 tight end in the 2025 class, according to 24/7 Sports, took a recruiting visit to Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday to take in Kansas's win over Colorado, watching the Jayhawks' third win over a ranked team in as many weeks. And while Cure is still committed to Kansas State, I think that's important to note, Ryan, that he has not decommitted from Kansas State at this point. Both Oregon and Kansas are attempting to drive a wedge into that commitment and really make things interesting.
Yeah. I don't want to give this any more oxygen than we have to. And I understand we're at the point now where I've always said, if we get to the point where he's taking visits, right, and it's pre-signing day, and if we get to the point that he goes to Eugene, which I texted with Lincoln last night, and his quote to me when I said, are you going to Oregon this weekend? He said, I think so. So now that all this is starting to, happen, now is when I said, I'll come back and we'll circle back around to this recruitment, because until now it's been a lot of hypotheticals. If he does this, if he goes here, if they say this, if they pitch this, I mean, it's a lot of that. Now that we're getting to that formality of it, where it's becoming a reality that these visits are happening, that he clearly is more than just thinking about, possibilities outside of Kansas State. It's more seriously considering maybe possibilities outside of Kansas State. We have to talk about it. But again, I think at this point, it's just, hey, let's let folks know that this visit is happening. And again, it's something that we will circle back to, after signing day, or for myself and for Go PowerCat subscribers, early next week. Until then, just know that the visit is happening. Just know that he's considering some things, and we'll leave it at that, because anything more, I think we're just getting ahead of ourselves as my light goes out.
Some things we will be talking about here in the next segment. The 2026 class is shaping up to be a strong one, and we could just have a new number one player in the state of Kansas. This is a guy that both of us had a chance to see recently. He stood out in matchups with older Power 4 commits, not just on one side of the ball, but on both sides. So stay tuned for that. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Winter sports season is arriving, which means hot gyms followed by going outside into the cold weather. And Home Field has you covered for everything you'll face. T-shirts for the indoors, where the heat's going to be ramped up, and sweatshirts, jackets, and outerwear to toss on over the top of that shirt when the game's over. Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri fans each have more than 40 items apiece to choose from. So head over to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code linked below in the description, and you can get 15% off your first order. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Ryan and I caught a monster semifinal game between two previously undefeated teams on Friday, as Manhattan pulled away late to land a 31-21 victory over a Derby team that, quite frankly, both of us thought was probably the best team in the state. And playing a major role in Manhattan's win was center Trey Huber, which is why he earned our Unsung Star of the Week. Ryan, he had a tough task going up against a nose tackle with FBS offers in Derby's Mylan Colvin, and Hoover, did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Trey Hoover. You could probably give the Unsung Star of the Week to the entire Manhattan offensive line. I mean, they were that dominant against Derby's front on defense, and I think they created a ton of pressure even on the defensive line of scrimmage, did Manhattan. So you could give it to kind of just the trenches across the board for the Tribe. But Trey Hoover in particular, you could see right away that they wanted him to be, kind of the leader, if you will. I mean, not just from a figurative standpoint, but quite literally in the way that he got outside, on pulls and things like that, as the lead blocker. He's only about 6'2", maybe 260, 250-ish in that ballpark. But there's a lot to like here, Kevin, from a recruiting standpoint. I'm a little surprised maybe that there hasn't been a little bit more activity again from some of the smaller classes. But, even thinking about, again, when we think about preferred walk-on season, right? I mean, Sam Hecht is a guy that jumps to mind from Kansas State that was similar in size, probably a little bit taller, maybe closer to 6'3", but probably thinner right now than Hoover is. And I think about like Michael Capria out of Liberty that's at Kansas State right now. Another guy, Cale Farkas at Kansas. All guys to me that physically resemble Hoover. And yet at the same time, I think Hoover's got a little bit more tenacity than just about all those guys have outside of maybe Capria. I mean, I think he's got a wrestling background. So there's that ability to, understand body leverage and playing from, low and then coming up high. I mean, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining wrestling to football, but you understand what I'm talking about,
Sure.
here, folks. If you're turning into this show, you understand offensive linemen. With Hoover, though, I'm really excited to see what he does against a Gardner team and another talented nose tackle. Isaiah Williams will bring a little bit different strategy than Mylan Colvin in the sense that he's 6'6", 295 pounds. So to me, if he puts on back-to-back tape of Mylan Colvin and winning that matchup and then coming back in the state championship against Isaiah Williams and winning that matchup, I think that Hoover has put together back-to-back playoff game tapes that are really, really strong, Kevin. And he was a big reason why Manhattan, not only won that game, but won it the way that they did, kind of in a resounding fashion for about 2.5, maybe even 3 quarters, right? Until Derby kind of self-destructed in a lot of senses there late in the game. But yeah, really, really good game for Manhattan. And I thought about doing this, Kevin, but I figured there's probably somebody out there that's already in the process if Manhattan goes on and wins it. But yeah, we could have had some fun with me clipping some highlights of you and I talking up Derby these last couple of weeks, because that did not go well. But just know that we were really, really impressed by Manhattan. That's a very, very good football team.
Yeah, he also shares, Hoover does, something with another guy that we liked a year ago, Jeremy Schleicher, and them have really, really quick pro agility times. Hoover was a guy that at Sharp's top prospect combine, I think, went like 4.56 in the short shuttle, which is very quick for a bigger guy like that. And you see it play out on the football field too. It's not just a combine thing. He's getting to his angles, his position.
Exactly.
And that allows him to use the leverage that you were talking about as well. Another guy I wanted to ask you about, Ryan, is a former unsung star of the week, and that's Manhattan quarterback Carter Aslan. Of course, I nominated him for that honor after watching him against Lawrence Free State, and you had a chance to see him up close in this game.
I tell you what, outside of maybe Tate Nagy, and we talked up Tate Nagy on the show a little bit. We've talked up Tyson Beshore from St. James Academy on the show. Outside of Nagy, though, I would probably, put what I saw from Aslan this last week up there as kind of the most important quarterback that I saw this season in the state of Kansas. And let me explain, Tate Nagy's the type of guy that you have to continuously account for. And that seems like something stupid to say. You're going to account for any quarterback, but in his ability to, in a single play on a single down, even a down that as a defense, you do everything right, that he can still capitalize on and make you pay for. Aslan's right there to me. And to me, Aslan's a little bit different as a runner. He's got a little bit more physicality and kind of a toughness to him, maybe, than Nagy has. They both have that kind of moxie to him. Aslan maybe to a fault, where he toes that line of arrogant and confident.
We just to put this out there, we've seen him twice. I saw him against Free State, and we both saw him against Derby. Picked up personal foul calls in both of them for a little bit of the extracurricular trash talk stuff as well. So he is very active in that department.
He's definitely that type of guy that, if he's on your team, you absolutely love him. And he's a guy that you're going to fight for, because you see how hard he's fighting for those extra yards and keeping plays alive and things like that. But yeah, if you're on the other side, you absolutely hate him. And you can ask the Derby student section, about that from last Friday. But Kevin throws a really good ball. I mean, a better ball than I expected from him, right? He's got quarterback ability, and yet then at the same time, he's got just that natural athletic tendency where he can take off, unlike a lot of guys in the state. I think that, he's the type of player that's going to be a real asset at the next level. What that level is, Kevin, I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on, because I think he probably could play. I think you could make the argument that he could play as high as FCS. I don't know if that'll be at the quarterback position or not. But either way, I just think the blueprint from him, his dad is a former junior college head coach. He's a defensive coordinator. I mean, a talented football mind. He clearly has it, similar to Tate Nagy in all those aspects. And I think he's just got this will to win about him that is unlike, again, a lot of guys that we saw this year. So he's a player that, if he can kind of, and I know it's a gamble, right? I get this covering recruiting. If he's a guy that can extend his recruitment beyond this early signing day and roll that dice and gamble on himself, bet on himself for that second signing period in February, there might be some schools out there, again, at whatever level that may be, that say, we could use a quarterback like this that maybe is a little bit more projectable, maybe needs some fine tuning and things like that. But there's enough of these intangibles that he carries and these inside traits that he has that I think could really benefit our football team. And we'll see if that takes place.
Yeah, the running stuff, I think, plays up a lot, because not only does he have toughness, he's a really natural runner with a lot of elusiveness to him. I think the passing could take a little bit longer to catch up. But to your point, if you're asking, can he throw the ball at an FCS level, at a Division II level, I think he can. It's probably going to take a little bit of time, but when the mechanics are right, when everything is right, you can see him making the sorts of throws into the sorts of spaces that he'll be asked to do at those levels. And so I agree with you. He is somebody that is kind of intriguing to watch as we head into early signing period, but potentially if he stretches that thing out in the late signing period, I'd be interested to see what kind of opportunities he could have there. Overall, this was a terrific matchup and one that was really close up until some turnovers allowed Manhattan to add a little bit of space between the two teams. But included in that matchup was a chance to see a couple great individual matchups, both of them involving Manhattan defensive back J.J. Dunnigan. On defense, Dunnigan often found himself matched up with four-star tight end and Tennessee commitment Dasan Brame. And when Dunnigan went onto the field at wide receiver, he went some reps against Kansas State cornerback commitment Martell Jackson. And Ryan, he played well enough at both that I think that you might have a bold statement to make about Dunnigan.
Let's play some highlights here first. And I strictly just went with defense because I want this out there for the folks to see. They're watching on YouTube first. Obviously, the receiver slips here, but this is a one-handed catch right in front of Kevin and I that was spectacular agility for him to make the catch and then stay in bounds down the sideline. Here he is again, one-on-one with Dasan Brame. You see the ability to close. You see the timing. And then on the third clip that you're going to see here, it's again closing speed to take away what could have been maybe a 5-yard gain in the run, and it amounts to like one or none. He was every bit as advertised in this type of setting. I say as advertised. You've seen him before. I've seen him before. We knew what we were going to get. The question was, we had never seen him in this type of atmosphere where it's on the road, undefeated season on the line, state championship berth on the line, going against a player like Dasan Brame that we have talked up on this show before as being, probably not that far away, right in the here and now with Lincoln Cure in terms of separation of 1A, 1B in the tight end market, not just in Kansas, in the country, I believe. Yeah. You do not see tight ends like Dasan Brame and Lincoln Cure come out of this area, let alone any state in the same year, like ever. So I say all of that. And again, one more thing, before the game, you and I went up to Joe Schartz from Manhattan and we said, are we going to be lucky enough? Coach, we made, 2.5 hour drive. The least you could do is bless us with some one-on-ones. And Joe Schartz was like, hey, guys, you're going to get it. I think you're going to see JJ on Dasan quite a bit here. And he was right. I mean, it was clearly part of the scheme that they were going to leave JJ over the top and then allow him as a football player and as an advanced defensive mind to then read, do I need to stay locked on Dasan here or can I play with more freedom? Very, very rarely, Kevin, did he make the wrong decision. In fact, I think the only bad play we saw him make led to was a missed tackle that did lead to one of Derby's touchdowns. And I just thought, I remember turning to you and I said, I actually love this about J.J. Dunnigan, is he turned to all of his teammates and immediately was like, that is me. Wash it. Not your fault. Let coaches get on to us or whatever, but that's me. And he didn't make another mistake the entire game. I mean, it was very clearly like, ooh, I tried to do a little bit too much on that one play, and he didn't stress the rest of the way. I say all that to finally get to this proclamation here. I've got to get this off my chest. Kevin, I think he's the number one player in the state for 2026. I do not care what 24/7 says. I know that I'm still working for 24/7. I get all this, right? I think he's better than Ian Prima right now. And I think also when it comes to rankings that you and I have always talked about, is it's not just where you are now, but it's also where you're going to be.
Yep.
And I think right now, what he's proven both as a wide receiver and as a defensive back is that he's athletically unlike a lot of guys. I mean, you could make the pitch that he could be a wide receiver at a very, very high collegiate level, and yet he's still more advanced on defense, which goes to tell you like just what type of defensive back he is. I don't think he's a corner. I think he's a safety. And yet again, at the same time, I think he could still play corner in the right scheme with the right coaching and things like that. Cornerbacks are unbelievable athletes. Like, the amount of guys that you can say can go play corner or safety at the next level seamlessly is very few. There are guys that can do it, but I mean, guys that have the physical tools to do both in today's day and age are, few and far between. So I say all that again to come back to the point of right now, he's very, very advanced. I mean, when I think about defensive backs in this area that I have seen that I'm like unbelievable, like no doubters, maybe Dante Manning out of the Kansas City, Missouri side at Raytown would be a guy that I would put in that kind of air with J.J. Dunnigan. And then you think about projecting down the line. Ian Premer is a guy that I think right now is still kind of transitioning from basketball a little bit. I think, there's still some of that football for him that's still coming of age. So I think JJ's already ahead of him there from what I've seen. And then you think about the long term. I think Ian is definitely a guy with the way the tight ends are progressing in the modern era of football that can meet all of those things and meet all those expectations and be that guy. But I think you're seeing from JJ an ability to be a real like NFL type level defensive back right now. There are very few things that he needs to do to get him to his ceiling. And so, the gap is so small. He's, again, the smaller that gap is, Kevin, the less that you kind of have to think and worry. Like, he's already there. And so I'll pass it back to you, long-winded, by just saying I think that there are so very few things that are you need to work on or you need to correct with J.J. Dunnigan. He is the real deal. And he, to me, is the number one player in 2026 because of all the things I just said. You can't find a player right now that is as big a difference maker on both sides of the ball in the state of Kansas as J.J. Dunnigan, and ask any opponent that's faced him, and they'll agree.
Yeah, and I think to the point about talking about him as a receiver, he's not going to be a wide receiver in college.
No.
Most likely. But it speaks to the athleticism that he has because he does have quickness. You can see his ability to transition, his ability to get on top of defensive backs. And then the ball skills are so terrific. And obviously, if you've got terrific hands and ball skills as a wide receiver, that's going to put over. I'm glad you brought up the NFL thing because I don't necessarily like talking about high school guys and how they would do in the NFL. It's a world away. But at the same time, when you watch the NFL play callers are so good at getting guys isolated where they say, hey, your left outside linebacker cannot cover in space. We are going to attack that guy and make him make plays in space. I think the thing that's truly special about Dunnigan, when you consider him as a safety, like you said, I think he can play corner. I think he can be very effective even as a corner. As a safety, he's almost a defensive chess piece. So you move around and ask to do certain things where the offense can't look at him and say, we're going to exploit J.J. Dunnigan doing this or that or exploit him in coverage. We're going to run at him. No, he's got all of those boxes checked. And so I do think that he's a guy that when you look at, hey, how would this guy fare in the NFL with, the requisite development and weight round, those things obviously in there as well. I do think that he projects as a really high level guy that not only could you not pick on, but as some of the defensive coaches could almost look back at the matchups and say, hey, J.J. Dunnigan's going to be a blitzer this game because we like our chances to have him attacking offensive linemen in space. JJ in this game, he's going to go against your number one tight end, and he's going to do a really good job. He's going to cover a slot. We're going to put him in the box and use him as an extra guy against the run. Those are all things that I think JJ Dunnigan could do at a high level moving forward.
And let me finish by saying this, which is, probably something that fans, representing both of our schools are going to want to know is, I think, on the plus side, on the positive side, glass half full, I think he does, I think there is some of him that says, being a difference maker and staying at home in the state of Kansas is important to me. And I do think he's very open. I know that obviously folks that are just now tuning in to the JJ Dunnigan sweepstakes, his dad did play at Kansas State. And so there is that kind of lineage there. He's obviously right in their backyard at Manhattan High School. But I do think too, he's taking this recruiting process and wanting to do his own research. He's wanting to hear which schools are going to best suit him and where he fits schematically. He's going to Nebraska. He's going to Kansas. He's taking visits. He wants to experience it all. So from a glass half full, I definitely think KU and K-State are in there, and they've made the longest relationship with him. They're as entrenched as anybody. So everybody beyond now is going to have to play catch up with that. The glass half empty, Kevin, is the stuff that we saw on Friday night, the stuff that he's put on tape this fall. I think Michigan's already in the sweepstakes, right? There are going to be more and more teams that are going to be coming. We aren't the only ones that are going to go, this is a blue chip, no doubt, stop overthinking it type player that can come in and make an immediate impact as a freshman, then still make an impact as a senior. We're not the only ones that have these eyeballs here. So again, the unfortunate part is I think that this is a race that is just beginning, and I think will start to include some heavy hitters here in the offseason if I had to take a stab at it.
Well said. And coming up, we will have our interview with Raytown wide receiver Larry Porter, who recently visited Kansas State in Kansas back-to-back and faces a big decision heading into next week's early signing period. We'll be right back.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty. I'm here as always with Ryan Wallace. And we're joined today by maybe the hottest local recruit right now, Raytown wide receiver Larry Porter. Larry, thanks for stopping by the show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Larry, the reason you've gotten so much attention is you just had an absolute monster senior season. For those who haven't seen you play before, how would you describe yourself as a football player?
I think I say I'm very versatile. I think when I get to college, I'll probably play the X and Z, but I think I could play that slot. I'm probably 6'2". I think I can get over the top of you, but I think I can take a hitch to the crib too. I just think I have a very versatile game.
Larry, you're a guy that has also played some basketball. Was basketball your first love, or was it football? And at what time did you kind of realize, man, I could take what I do on the basketball court and make that other dimension of my football game that much better?
Oh, that was a great question. Basketball, man, I've been playing basketball, since I was born. For real. I started playing football because in basketball, I wasn't playing strong enough. So my dad, he put me in football, and I loved it. And I've always loved it. And I played it in the 5th, 4th, and 6th grade, but then I broke my wrist, so I came back to it in my junior year, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. With the just like you said, the basketball skills, the IQ, knowing what they're in man or zone, it just helps me a lot.
Well, one of the things you get praised for a lot is the way that you track deep balls in the air. Is there a basketball corollary to that? Is there something that you do on the basketball court where it's is it like going for a rebound or a similar skill set?
That's exactly the great comparison. Just like how I go for a rebound. In basketball, I average about 7, 8 rebounds a game, just snagging it over the top of people. And just that athleticism that I have, it really does translate to the football field.
I know you were at the K-State camp over the summer, and you can tell us some other camps that maybe I didn't know about or we don't know about. But point being, you tried to get out there this summer and kind of show your abilities, and yet still recruiting didn't really take place until when? When did you feel like, man, I'm starting to get the phone calls, the messages, the letters? When did that really start to happen?
That is a great question. I would say that started to happen around when you guys started podcasting me. I'm not, yeah, like for real. Around when you started podcasting, like I had a few FCS here and there, throughout the summer, but like once you guys podcasted me like that mid-season when I had like 500-ish receiving yards, like that's where it started heating up, and it just took off. Thank you. All glory to God. It just really just took off so fast.
What was your thought when that first like Power 4 offer came in? Like when Kansas and Kansas State came in and they offered you and they're like, Larry, we want you to play in the Big 12, man. Like what was that like?
Just like all the work I put in the summer paid off, because I knew my junior year tape. If you ever watched it, I knew I had to work on a lot of things to become a Power 4 player. And that whole summer, I was just working with great coaches and teammates, and just to know that work is paid off. But I still have a lot more to do, because now it's time to go to college and be a man. It's a man's game, so I have to lock in.
Now we're coming up. You just announced that you're going to reveal your commitment on December 4th. Unless you want to commit right now, that'd be great for you. But first off, for fans out there watching, first off, before I get to the question, for KU fans that are wondering, or K-State fans that are like, oh, he's wearing our jacket, folks, it's just a jacket, okay? He's got Missouri on underneath, like there's no reasoning behind him wearing the K-State jacket. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But since you have the K-State jacket on, that was the first visit that you took this past weekend out to Kansas State in Manhattan. What did you take away from that visit? And what were kind of the things that you learned that you and your family were kind of like, okay, we like this about potentially going to K-State?
I'll probably say it's two things that really shocked me. I knew K-State had a great fan base, but when you're there at the game and you're around the people, man, they just love football. Like, it's crazy. Like 30 minutes before the game, it's just packed out, the student section, and it's just one of the craziest environments I've ever been in. They blew out Cincinnati, but it was still packed. And then the second thing I say is talking to Avery Johnson, the quarterback. He's a very humble guy and down to earth, and I was happy to see that, for such a guy that's, I think he just broke the sophomore touchdown record for like K-State, and just to have that type of success and for him to be like that was great to just see.
Now with Kansas, you're a Kansas City kid. I think the first time you went out to see Kansas was at Arrowhead, right? Was it against TCU? What was their thoughts about going to where the Chiefs play and watching a KU football game there?
That was very surreal. They lost, but it was okay because I'm 5 minutes away from Arrowhead, so that's just crazy. It's right there. I don't think they're gonna play there next year, but just being there and seeing that and in that environment, it was just great. It was great.
You and Coach Leon Douglas, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago, go back. I believe he coached your older brothers, right? At North Kansas City High School. Talk about maybe the relationship that you have with him and how that might help Kansas's chances.
Yeah, Coach Leon, man, I couldn't give enough praise to him. He just kept bringing me up to the Kansas coaches, just kept talking to him, and, we're from like the same place, Kansas City. He coached North Kansas City. I'm in Raytown. Like, so we're from the same place, and he always put a good word in for me, and I really appreciate that. So that's definitely going to help a lot. He's called me, even in my official visit on Monday, I was with him the whole time, and he's just a great recruiter.
Kansas State has some room in their receiver rotation. Kansas losing a bunch of its top wideouts. Did either or both schools talk to you about the possibility of maybe playing early as a freshman?
Yes, sir, both. I'm trying to leave in January so I can get that 6 months, ahead and gain weight and learn the playbook and be around a nutritionist and just all good stuff like that, just so I can play. But yes, they have, but I have to earn that spot for sure.
When you were on these visits, these last couple days, and you mentioned how tired you are, kind of worn out, a lot being thrown at you from both these schools. But when you were at K-State and then when you were at KU, what are kind of do you have like maybe a top 2 or 3 things that you and your family, like a checklist, like we want to hear this, or we want to see this? Tell fans kind of what it is that ultimately is going to decide where you're going.
That's a great question. Some of the things that I look for a school is just like what he said. Could I play? That's a good thing. Could I play, make an impact on the team? Another one is coaching. My wide receiver coach, I'm going to be with him 95% of the time. Coach Samuel and Coach Middleton are great guys. And definitely I feel like if the coach is my wide receiver coach has my best interest. And then the third one, I'll probably say winning. I want to win. I'm tired of losing, I want to win. That's probably 3 things I'll say.
I talked to you already about Arrowhead. This time when you visited Kansas, you actually went to the campus and went to Lawrence. And so I'm wondering what you did while you were there and kind of what that experience was like.
Man, one thing I will say about KU has, man, a top probably 5 facility in the nation. Everything is brand new. Everything is just spanking brand new. The weight room is huge. The nutritionists and things like that is just crazy. They had like a pod, like I don't even know. It calculated your muscle from every ounce. It's just crazy technology. And the locker room is huge. It's just a crazy facility. But Lawrence, I didn't really, get to be around the fans or anything because I was only there for a day. But Lawrence is a huge place and only like 45 minutes away from me.
Let me ask you, I got 2 questions that I want to fire at you real quick. The first is, you mentioned Avery Johnson. Obviously, he'll return for Kansas State. For KU, maybe Jalen Daniels comes back, maybe he doesn't. There's a little bit more uncertainty there. How much does maybe the quarterback situation play into your decision, or is it kind of a non-factor?
No, it's a factor. It's a factor. For sure. I hope Jalen stays, but if he does go to the NFL, I hope him best of luck. But Avery Johnson, I know he's going to stay. He's a true sophomore. But it definitely is a factor for sure to have a great quarterback, throwing to me. But I know KU and K-State are always going to have that situated.
Sure. And so then let me finish with this one then with you. As you come back now, you're like fresh off the KU visit, fresh off the K-State visit. In your mind, do you kind of know your decision, or is it something that you still would like to talk with your family? And do you think your family's kind of are you guys thinking the same?
I think some of my family are thinking the same, but I think I gotta talk to some of my family still and get that decision so I'm sure and I'm 100%, 1,000% committed to wherever school I go to.
We wanted to ask you some quick fire questions today also, Larry. Not football related, just in general. Thanksgiving is coming up. If Thanksgiving dinner's on the table, what's the side you're going for?
Macaroni.
Perfect. Hey, we always like to talk barbecue with our Kansas City guys, right? And actually Harp Barbecue that Kevin and I love, that started in Raytown, actually just moved out of Raytown. So Kevin and I are excited about that. But how about for you? What's kind of your go-to barbecue joint?
What's crazy? Being from Kansas City, I don't eat enough barbecue, man. I don't try enough barbecue spots. I'm going to say Gates because that's what I ate the most. But I definitely need to go out and go eat some better, not better than Gates, but more barbecue joints, for sure.
All right. So you're considering both KU and K-State. It's not a football question. What's your favorite jersey combination for both?
Man, that all white I have for K-State, they don't bring it out because I think, it's very hard to clean out, because it's all white. That all white is tough.
They got to bring it out more.
They do. And then KU, man, they have a lot of jersey combinations. I don't know. It's a lot. I'm going to go with, I think I had the black helmet, red jersey, and black pants. I'm going to go with that one. Or the blackout. I really like it. They're clean.
That's a nice combo. Okay, how about this? I won't make you do a starting 5, but in the Olympics they do that kind of like 3-on-3 basketball, right? So let's say who is on, if you're the coach and you can pick any 3 players, we'll say alive. We're not going to throw or retired guys or dead guys there, but alive playing right now. Who's on Larry Porter's 3-on-3 team?
Basketball?
Yes.
Alive right now. I can pick anybody.
Yeah. Let's say current NBA. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pick LeBron James.
Yeah.
Steph Curry. I think he's the greatest point guard of all time. And alive right now. What if I said Michael Jordan?
Oh,
He's alive. He's alive.
I'll let you go, Mike.
He is, but he's old, man. I'm going to go Mike.
There was a story. Was it Michael Kidd-Gilchrist that he had with the Bobcats that he played in 101 and was in his 50s and supposedly just absolutely cooked?
That sounds like a Mike type story. That sounds like a Michael Jordan type story for sure. For sure.
So you do watch football though, right? Like wide receiver that you admire or that you try to model your game after?
That's a great question. One receiver?
Hey, you can pick multiples. If it's hey, I take my releases from this guy, I like the way this guy runs routes. Just who are you watching? Who do you like?
I'm gonna say Justin Jefferson, but I'm not gonna talk about he's a great player. I'm not gonna talk about the releases or anything. I think I just saw a quote about him. He didn't have a lot of receiving yards, but he said if he's not eating, then the other team is eating. And I like that because now wide receivers are kind of divas. We got that type of, thing around us that we're divas. And I like that because he's the best or one of the best. Jamar Chase is having a crazy year, but one of the best right now. And I just like that to hear that from wide receivers.
All right, well, let's get you out of here with this one then, Larry. Here at KCSN, a lot of Chiefs coverage. This is the spot to be if you want to know what's the inside with the Chiefs. You're in the Chiefs' backyard. You mentioned it, Arrowhead right around the corner from you. What's your bold prediction? How far are the Chiefs going? And if they're winning, who are they beating? And if they're losing, who do you have them losing to?
All the way. We're not losing. We're not losing. I never said we're going to lose. All the way. We got a little patches, but Patrick Mahomes had a great game against the Panthers. I'm happy to see that because he's been playing a little bit down, and I'm happy to see that.
There you have it.
All right. Well, Larry, thanks again for joining us, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you like what you've seen or heard, leave us a like, subscribe, or hit us with a 5-star rating. We also hope that all of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving filled with way too much food and surrounded by the people you love the most. Until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.